Okay, so have you ever looked in the mirror and felt like he was judging you?
Oh,
Like it was kind of sizing you up.
yeah, like it had an opinion.
Right. And I don't know if it's just me, but sometimes I just get this weird feeling like my reflection is looking back with an attitude.
Oh, absolutely. And it turns out there might be more to that feeling than we realize.
Really?
Yeah. So today we're going to deep dive into some research that suggests that mirrors could actually be more than just passive reflectors.
So you're saying they might actually be affecting how we see ourselves.
That's the idea. The study called reflective cognition, analyzing the potential for judgment in mirror-based perception, suggests that mirrors could be acting as these silent judges and shaping our self-perception without us even knowing it.
That's kind of freaky when you think about it. Like, it's not just showing us what we look like, but also influencing how we feel about it.
Exactly.
So where do we even begin with this? Like, how do you even study something like that?
Well, they started by looking at something. I think we've probably all experienced that feeling of being watched by our own reflection.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I was just talking about that.
Right. So to study this, they had people spend time in a room with mirrors and track their emotional responses. And get this, they found that 67% of the participants reported feeling judged after only 5 minutes of mirror exposure.
Wait, so they felt judged by the mirror itself, not just judging themselves in the mirror.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
That's so bizarre.
It is, and it gets even weirder. They found that this feeling was even stronger when the lighting was dimmer.
Oh, that makes sense, though. If you think about it, we always feel less confident in those dimly lit bathrooms, right?
Right,
So
exactly.
it's not just about the shadows. It's like our brains are connecting that dim lighting with a more critical gaze or something.
You're totally on the right track because the study suggests that it might actually be linked to how our brains are wired.
Okay, how? So,
Well, so there's this part of our brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, and it's associated with social evaluation and threat detection. And this area shows increased activity when you look in a mirror.
so you're saying our brain is basically treating our reflection like another person who could be judging us.
It's possible, yeah. From an evolutionary standpoint, it makes sense because reflections could have been potential threats or allies, so our brains are kind of primed to react that way.
That is so fascinating.
It is.
So our brains are on high alert when we're looking in the mirror, especially in those dimly lit situations where we already feel more vulnerable.
Exactly. And it gets even more interesting because the study also looked at how distortions in the mirror affect how we see ourselves. But we'll save that for after the break.
Okay, sounds good.
So to test this idea of distortions, they set up an experiment using mirrors that were subtly distorted.
Distorted how?
Like they made tiny, almost unnoticeable alterations to the mirrors.
Oh, wow. So you wouldn't even know by looking at it.
Right, exactly the kind of thing you wouldn't consciously pick up on. But it turns out even those tiny distortions had an effect.
Really?
Yeah, participants who looked into these altered mirrors rated themselves as less attractive compared to those who looked in regular mirrors.
How much less attractive?
About 19% lower. It's amazing how sensitive we are to even the tiniest changes in our reflection.
Wow, 19%. That's huge. And it makes you think about all those filtered images we see online, right?
Exactly. It's like we're constantly bombarded with these idealized versions of ourselves.
Right. It's like a constant stream of distorted mirrors.
And there's more. The study also found that the participants who looked in the distorted mirrors were more likely to adjust their appearance.
Like they're trying to fix the flaws they saw.
Yeah, it seemed like they were subconsciously trying to correct those perceived imperfections.
That's crazy. It's not just about feeling less attractive. It's actually changing our behavior, too.
Exactly. And it really highlights how our brains are constantly comparing our reflection to some internal ideal.
And even the smallest difference can throw us on.
Yeah. Right. And this whole thing gets even more fascinating when you bring in the concept of labels.
Okay, yeah, you mentioned something about mirrors being labeled friendly or critical.
Exactly. So for this part of the study, they took identical mirrors and simply put these labels on them.
So the mirrors were the same, but the labels were different.
Precisely. But the results were really interesting. The group who looked into the mirror labeled critical showed a 23% increase in signs of discomfort.
Like what kind of signs?
Well, they fidgeted more, they adjusted their posture more often, and they even touched their faces more.
It's like they were trying to make themselves look better for the critical mirror.
Yeah, it's almost like they were subconsciously trying to please the mirror as if it could actually judge them.
That's so weird. But it makes sense in a way, right? Like we kind of treat our reflections as if they're separate entities.
Absolutely. And the study even found that people avoided direct eye contact with the critical mirror more often.
So they were literally trying to avoid its judgment.
It seems that way, and what's even more remarkable is that all of this happened just because of a simple label.
It's crazy how powerful our subconscious perceptions are.
Absolutely. And this brings us to a pretty groundbreaking conclusion. This study provides some of the first real evidence that mirrors aren't just passive objects. They can actually affect our emotions, our self-perception, and even our behavior in ways we might not even realize.
Wow, that is unsettling when you think about it. Something as common as a mirror could be subtly shaping our experiences.
It is, but it's also empowering because if we can understand how these influences work, maybe we can start to take control.
Right? Like we don't have to be at the mercy of our mirrors.
Exactly.
So if mirrors can really have this much of an impact on us, what can we do about it?
Well, the first thing is just being aware of it now that we know mirrors can affect us on this deeper level. We can start paying more attention to how different mirrors make us feel.
Yeah, like do we feel more confident in some mirrors than others?
Exactly. And if so, why is that? Is it the lighting, the size, the shape of the mirror?
So it's like we need to be more mindful of our reflection environments.
Yeah, exactly. We can choose mirrors and spaces that make us feel good instead of just settling for whatever we have.
And remember that study with the labels? Maybe we can actually use that idea to our advantage.
Absolutely. Instead of letting a mirror dictate how we feel, we can choose to see ourselves in a more positive light.
So like look in the mirror and actually say positive things about ourselves.
Exactly. It might feel awkward at first, but the more we do it, the more we can change those subconscious associations.
Instead of focusing on what we don't like, we can highlight the things we do like.
Right, and don't forget about the environment beyond the mirror itself. Surround yourself with images and messages that make you feel good about who you are.
It's like creating a whole visual landscape that supports a positive self-image.
Exactly, and it helps you see yourself as part of a bigger picture.
This has been so eye-opening. I don't think I'll ever look at a mirror the same way again.
Me neither. It really makes you realize how powerful our perceptions can be.
And how much our environment can shape those perceptions.
Absolutely.
I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today.
I hope so.
We've explored some pretty groundbreaking research that suggests that mirrors might be more than just passive reflectors.
Right. They could actually be influencing how we see ourselves and how we feel about ourselves.
And we've talked about some practical things we can do to take control of those influences.
Like choosing our reflection environments carefully and focusing on the positive.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
to our listeners, we challenge you to really examine your relationship with mirrors. How do they make you feel? What can you do to create a more positive and empowering reflection?
It's been great exploring this with you.
Likewise, and to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the surprising world of mirrors. We'll see you next time.